Well, I was born and raised in Jordan, and it's a small town, about 10, 11,000 people. And we went through the regular thing of doing everything together. All the kids played games and everything. It was during the Depression years, of course, so we were all poor, but nobody knew it, because everybody was in the same boat. When I graduated from the high school there, in the January before Pearl Harbor, then I went to work for the CB&Q Railroad, which was one of the larger railroads at that time.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced.
I was working with the railroad where the yard came out on Pearl Harbor Day and said the Japanese had just bombed Pearl Harbor, and he heard it on the radio. So we all stopped what we were doing and went in and listened to the radio. And the first thing we had to do was look on a map to see where Pearl Harbor was. And the next day we came back, the same clerk came out again and said, I just heard on the radio that our jobs are going to be frozen, which meant that it was vital transportation and they weren't going to let us join the service. We were going to have to do the same job. Well, I didn't like that, so then the next day I went in and quit. Working a little bit out at Hill Air Force Base, halfway between Salt Lake City and Ogden. And we were working on the Allison engine, which powers the P-38, in addition to other airplanes. They had a guy that came through, he was a recruiter, and he'd been in the service, and he told us that we could do the same thing, only up and just behind the front lines. Rather than doing it here, we could go there and help the airplanes, help them get ready to fight again. So we thought that was a good idea, so then, or I did anyway, so then I joined the Air Corps. We went to Bowman Field, Louisville, Kentucky, for basic training. And we didn't spend very long there. It sent us to South Plains Army Flying School at Lubbock, Texas. And what we were doing was forming. We were the groundwork, the originators of starting a troop carrier, where you tow gliders and haul paratroops and those kinds of things. Hitler had tried it and it wasn't a very good success, but somebody in our higher up people decided that maybe it would be a good thing to work out. So they started working up squadrons and groups all over the United States to train to go overseas to be engaged in the war itself, using that as a strategy, going behind the enemy lines with paratroopers and gliders, and the gliders could then carry infantry and equipment and ammunition and things like that, in addition to what the paratroopers couldn't when they were jumping out. And so that was what we were trained to do. Well, we went from Lubbock, Texas to Polk Field, which is on Fort Bragg. Then we trained from there. And one of the things we did with some of the paratroopers, the 82nd Airborne was in training there, and they were new, and they had to get 5 jumps to get qualified to get their paratroopers' wings, and so on. So then we would do that, and we practiced towing gliders and So then I wound up as a radio operator. I was qualified, I guess, for that. We did all the communications with radio, with air, what we call air to air and air to ground and so on. In other words, you talk to radio operators in trucks, or you talk to them in other airplanes, or you talk to them back at your headquarters or whatever. In May of 1943, we just got through getting a good foothold on the invasion of North Africa. And Rommel was still in North Africa. And while they were pushing him out, well, we were at the other end of North Africa near Casablanca and Oran and so on. And then we were just hauling troopers and hauling supplies and still practicing and training. And then when they chased Rommel out, when he left and went to Sicily, then we moved just south of Tunis, right about where he was during that time. Went south about 80 miles of there, and then we had a runway that some of our people would push the sand flat. It was a lot of sand in that part of the country. And we'd put metal runways down so we could take off and land. We went twice into Sicily. We went 4 times into Italy. And in addition to those, well, then we had what they called sorties. And they didn't call those combat. C-47 wasn't called a combat airplane in those days. But we were still going over enemy territory and still getting shot at and things like that. We did D-Day and D+1, etc., plus some other just resupplies. And then we did 2 trips into Market Garden, which is the Holland invasion. We dropped some supplies at the Battle of the Bulge when the weather let us. My last one was when we went into what was called Varsity. That was where we left. We flew over into the Rhine River, behind it. And some dropped paratroopers, and we dropped the 17th Airborne, but some tow gliders and some dropped other airborne troops and so on. There were about, historians vary in the numbers, but at least 900 airplanes. I was never sorry that I did what I did. I wouldn't want to do it again.